Who are we rooting for?
Welcome to Sincast, presented by CinemaSins.
Welcome everybody to the Sincast. This is Chris Atkinson from CinemaSins, joined as always by the voice of CinemaSins, Jeremy Scott.
Hello.
And from Music Video Sins, Barrett Share.
Howdy.
And we are continuing our series of best of the years that we've been alive, and today is 1987.
Knowledge.
You happy because you got nothing. You got nothing. Nothing.
Bullshit, I can't hear you. Sound off like you got a pair. Sir, yes, sir.
Give me that baby, you warthog from hell.
How many assholes we got on this ship anyhow? No!
And 1987 is an incredible year, and we're going to be here for a while. 87 rivals 84 and 82, the other 80s years that we've gone over that were really, really good.
Yeah.
But I think this one might beat it because of just the sheer top heaviness of it. And then like a lot of the other just generally good movies that are on here. But, I guess right off the bat, what do you want to say? Princess Bride, Rob Reiner continuing a streak that is going to go into the 90s. The Princess Bride has become, in every word, a classic. And I don't know. I mean, if we ever get around to doing an Everything Wrong With, it might end up having like 15 sins in it because it's so good.
Yeah, that's got the biggest disparity of fans just because it's so relatable on so many different levels. Like you can have like 20-year-old hipsters that love this movie, and then you can have like Ted Cruz that this is his favorite movie.
I think that's correct.
Well, that's one of the things, we've got a couple of heavy dramas in this year with The Untouchables and Full Metal Jacket that are fantastic, right? That we're going to be debating this for several minutes, but, to the point about Princess Bride and its cultural impact, there are people, who are teenagers today who know that movie and love that movie, Princess Bride, but have never seen Untouchables or Full Metal Jacket. Like,
right.
Great as those two movies are, they have a certain generational foundation that hasn't bled through to future generations the way Princess Bride has. At least that's my opinion.
And I recently read something from Cary Elwes that was talking about how, he really enjoys still being identified with that character and how the movie was not a hit when it came out.
Right.
It did not do anything. And then suddenly he says 10 years later, when people are watching it on video and everything, that's when he knew that it had found a new life on home video. And I was one of those people. I saw this probably in the early 90s, the first time, and was just very struck by it. It was not exactly, it wasn't the absurdist humor of Monty Python, but it had some of that in it. But it also had those elements of Neverending Story that I love too. So it did it so well.
Yeah. One of the reasons that I think it's endured and that people of the next generation like it so much is because it's so easily digestible and it's so easily quotable. Right? Like there's a lot of like. Probably it's got to be the most on this list between like you killed my father, prepare to die, and as you wish, and the mostly dead and all that stuff. Like it's just like you can go on and on and on about like inconceivable, all the different quotes from like
I think we could do a whole podcast on The Princess Bride, but I'm going to go on to the next couple ones here. Jeremy, you mentioned Full Metal Jacket and The Untouchables. It's funny, Full Metal Jacket often, I think wrongly, is considered just a first half movie. Like the first half is good and the second half isn't. But I just think the first half is better than the second half. I think the second half is great. It's just that they gave you a whole full arc of just amazingness in the first half, and there was no way it could match it in the second half. But I love the second half, and I love the whole movie, Full Metal Jacket.
Wasn't Arlie Ernie's performance almost totally improvised?
Yeah, he was. I believe he was also a drill instructor
Yeah.
And they had some other actor who was going to play that, and he was just there as sort of a consultant.
Uh-huh.
So he went out and he just started doing stuff, and Stanley Kubrick was like, why don't we just make him the guy?
Do it like that.
Yeah.
And man, he's built a career out of it ever since, man.
Totally has made a career out of that. But yeah, Full Metal Jacket basically is one huge, like one amazing mini movie in the first hour. And then it's got, your, I guess your typical Vietnam stuff in the next hour. But I've always enjoyed the full part of it. Now, the next one I know that Jeremy and I are very high on, and that's the Untouchables. Mm-hmm. Brian De Palma's, I think his best movie. Yeah. It is, every time I watch it, and it does come on quite a bit on HBO. So much so that the Blu-ray version that I have, it was still in its wrapper. Because I see it on the HBO all the time. But every time I watch it, I sit there and I go, man, Brian De Palma is directing his ass off in this movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And it's got one of the best scores, I think, of all time, but especially for any kind of a crime movie. I tweeted, this is many months ago, but it had come on HBO, and like you, I watch it when it comes on. And I think I tweeted out, I would rather listen to the first 5-minute, overture of The Untouchables than watch any other complete movie.
Right.
It's such a great tone setter. And that rhythmic, oh God, it gives me chills even thinking about it.
This movie also gave Sean Connery his only Oscar, I believe. I don't think he won anything else. He may not even been nominated for anything else that I can think of. It's just an overall unreal movie, just every bit of it. And there's famous scenes in it. Of course, the train station scene is its most famous. But really, the whole movie's got just great stuff in it. There's not one moment where it's just like, oh, this is kind of going slow.
Yeah, it doesn't drag. All the performances are right on point. I love it. I love it, love it, love it. And it's gonna be hard. Gonna be hard not to pick that for my first vote.
It really is gonna be hard.
I hadn't seen this in ages, like probably since the early to mid 90s. And I was talking to you guys about it, I think last weekend, and Jeremy said, when you watch it again, make sure to notice all the shots that De Palma tries and pulls off in that thing. And I watched it actually last night, and I was just amazed by the scope of it's like Hitchcockian almost.
Yeah.
Like he's just showing off at some points. It's like, look what I can do. I can do this type of tracking shot. I can do this POV and everything. It's incredible.
Even the most just smallest of scenes has something in it that's just breathtaking. Just the scene where Kevin Costner goes and starts, I guess, investigating the gangster that's brought in the note. He's basically giving a note to Capone, and Costner comes out there and starts talking to him and telling the guard, don't let him back in the courtroom and all that. Even a scene like that has just like amazing stuff in it. Just the shots are breathtaking. Yeah. And then after that, of course, is another great, just like bravura type of thing, that, there's that interplay between those two characters.
This movie also has a guy almost nominated for our Poor Bastard podcast a few weeks back. The guy the guy that's running the liquor thing in the bank, when they finally decide to get serious, and Connery is like, everybody knows what a liquor is. It's just whether or not you got the balls to go get it. So they go down there and raid the place. This guy's doing his job. He didn't have any chance to stop him, but he sure gets killed with a baseball bat the next day by Capone, just to make an example out of him, even though it was only Sean Connery's fault that raid happened.
Right. All right, guys. What are some others that stand out to you?
This is a huge action year. I mean, and both good movies and culturally, we got Predator, RoboCop, Lethal Weapon, and Running Man.
Yes, and
Over the Top.
and over the top. This was that year where Predator and Running Man came out, and it had Schwarzenegger and Jesse the Body Ventura, both in both movies, both future governors.
That's a good point.
How's that happen? But both of those movies are just those are like perfect action movies. They are, when you talk about like movies just being like, oh, well, they're not shooting for anything big there. They're just a big dumb action movie. That's the type of dumb action movie that I want right there. Nothing that's like that adds, 45 minutes to the runtime a la Michael Bay, where it's like we've got to, go through all the different habits of our main characters and everything. Just stick Schwarzenegger in a jungle or a game arena and let him kill some people and then go on.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and this is, I just saw Predator again last week for the first time in a while. And I forgot how many long stretches, almost like Kubrick would do in this movie, where there's no dialogue. We're just kind of watching them try and figure out what the hell is going on. Like, if we ever sin to this movie, not for quality, but just for how much dialogue or how little dialogue there is, there wouldn't be very many sins in this movie, because there's a lot of quiet moments.
Yeah.
The whole climax is dialogue free, basically, except for a couple of zingers.
Yeah. Oh, and it's so beautiful. Yeah, it's so beautiful the way that's done. It's so, I wish more stuff could be like that. What else stands out to you guys?
Jesus. What caught my eye was a double dose, one that's very, very popular and one that maybe people haven't seen, of Steve Martin comedies.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, of course, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is the most famous one.
Yep.
But he also did a movie called Roxanne.
Yeah.
I love Roxanne.
Really, really great.
Yeah, it really is. By the way, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles continues the John Hughes train. He's done 5 years in a row. He's made 6 movies that are all classics.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Roxanne doesn't get talked about as much, but it's fantastic. It's the, sort of the modern retelling of Cyrano de Bergerac and all that.
Yeah.
But he's great in it. And he, it's just one of those, I love the scene in the bar where he has to come up with all the insults that these guys are not creative enough to come up with about his nose.
Yeah, he's right, like flexing his muscle at this point. Like, he can do anything, because they're two incredibly different characters that he plays in those two movies.
Oh, totally.
And he just nails both of them.
This is also the year that the Coens sort of came into, I guess this was their huge break of a movie, Raising Arizona. Blood Simple obviously is still considered like one of their greatest movies, but I think Raising Arizona sort of got them into that started to get them in the stratosphere. And it's such a funny movie, and this is one of the best Nick Cage movie performances you'll ever see, even though I don't think he got along with the Coen brothers very much. But Raising Arizona, also highly quotable, and you hear it everything from that movie to this day.
Where did the Academy go in 1987?
The Last Emperor won Best Picture in 1987. I have seen this movie twice. The first time I watched it, I hated it because I think I was actually 10 when I saw it. I saw it when I was way too young to watch this, but the second time I watched it, I was like, this is okay. There's better movies. It sort of continues what the Oscars were doing in this decade, where they just kept on going for the epic, the epic movie. It follows in the line of the Gandhi and Out of Africa and all that. It's like, well, we've got this in front of us, we better vote for it. Yeah. It's what it seems like anyway, but there's a lot of like amazing things in it. This is a Bernardo Bertolucci movie. They actually got to shoot inside the Forbidden City, which is something that nobody had ever been able to do before. So that's a big thing. And the story is, it's a kid's rise into power, basically. But, I'm not high on it.
The other, big dramas from the year, at least, like I remember Moonstruck getting a lot of discussion about at least acting performances. And Wall Street came out in 87.
Yes, Wall Street's another hugely quotable movie.
Yeah,
where do you stand on Wall Street? Do you guys like that?
Love Wall Street.
I like it a lot.
Yeah, I love that movie.
I actually, if it was in any other year, it would be contending for my vote.
That's Michael Douglas just chewing the fuck out of scenery, isn't it, man?
Yeah, and this is Charlie Sheen at his height of Charlie Sheenness. I mean, this is that for him. I was talking about this one of the podcasts we did a few weeks ago. The scene where he gets arrested and everything. He first walks into his office and he's like, "Hey, Carol's, how's it going?" And everybody's kind of like just dead. It's like a funeral almost inside the office, but he's the one that's excited. He has no idea what's about to hit him. And he gets in the office and he gets arrested, and he has to go back through that office where he was just like being a jackass basically. And he starts crying, and he actually is remembering, if the trivia is to be believed, he's remembering when his dad had a heart attack on Apocalypse Now.
Oh, wow.
And so he's walking back through there, and he's just, that's sort of his, I guess, sense memory thing going through when he's walking through the office there.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
But
it makes good drama, as we saw with, I mean, if you do it right. So this was Oliver Stone, right?
Yeah.
And under his hands, and like, Scorsese for Wolf of Wall Street. Like, if you that's a lot of drama that you can use to with the right story to really make that sing. Did he write it too?
I think he did, but Oliver Stone, I believe his dad was a stockbroker, and he sort of dedicated it to his dad at the end. And it's sort of a movie that was made in response to the Keating 5 stuff and the crash that happened, I believe, in '86. Or it was something that he could see coming, or a lot of people could see coming. He was already writing it. This came right after Platoon, by the way. He did Platoon the previous year. But
wow, that's a good 1-2 punch.
Yeah. According to Oliver Stone and Stanley Weiser were the co-writers on this. But yeah, Wall Street, if you want to see something that's just quotable as shit, just watch Wall Street. It's just never-endingly entertaining.
I got to talk about broadcast news a little bit.
Yeah, another one really high on the list.
Yeah, James Brooks stars William Hurt, Albert Brooks. It's basically behind the scenes at network news in, I think, DC. William Hurt is really great on camera, really great at reading the news, really pretty, but he's stupid. And Albert Brooks is like a gifted writer with the way he writes his news reports, and he's really insightful and has a lot of knowledge, but he's Albert Brooks. And so the dichotomy there is between the two of them is that Albert Brooks is the better newsman, but William Hurt's the better performer, and they will, he'll never be able to get to the level that William Hurt is on just for that one fact. Again, this is an unexpected theme. Another of my almost poor bastard moments was in here, where Albert Brooks finally gets a chance to read the news because everybody else wants to go to the correspondence dinner.
Yeah.
And he just gets a case of the worst flop sweats you've ever seen in your life, where they're bringing down blow dryers in between while, remote reporters are talking, and bringing him a change of shirt. And at one point he lifts up his arms and half the shirt is wet. And he was like, "Is this that visible?" And like somebody bumps the hanging background wire logo and it starts swinging. And so somebody grabs it. You can hear director go, "Your hands in the shot. Your hands in the shot."
And meanwhile, despite all of this, he reads the news perfectly.
He does.
Like everything else is the distraction to this. Is
like,
that he's sitting there.
The last line of his report before we're done watching this disastrous thing is like, "And 41 people are dead." And it cuts to commercial. He goes, "I wish I was one of them."
That's another thing. This is James L. Brooks at the height of his writing powers, and there's so many great lines in this, but my favorite one of all time is when they're at that party and one of the executives is talking to Holly Hunter, and he's like, "It must be nice to always believe you know better, to always think you're the smartest person in the room." And she goes, "No, it's awful." It's terrible. There's so many lines like that. Like, and there was another one I remember where William Hurt is like sitting there saying, because everybody's feeding him lines, and there's a point where he doesn't get the line fed to him, and he's like, "In other words, I think we're all okay." And you see Robert Prosky in the room go, "Who the hell cares what you think?"
I just love the little. There's that one moment where they're bustling through the director's studio, and the two guys have written the new news theme.
Oh yeah,
bringing a little Casio keyboard, and like, that's actually the right song, by the way, too.
Yes, it is. It is. Right, so great.
Sorry for that detour.
All right. So also we talked about some comedies. We didn't talk about Spaceballs, which is
we got to talk about Spaceballs.
Yeah, which is Mel Brooks might be his last great comedy.
Yeah.
He had some moments with like Robin Hood Men in Tights and stuff like that, but I think this is his last great one. And even if you wanted to compare it to his other ones, it's not as good as those, but Spaceballs is fantastic.
Yeah, talk about quotable, man.
Oh yeah,
I see your Schwartz is as big as mine. One question about this: why does Rick Moranis' or Dark Helmet's character go into like this weird Jamaican accent at the very end? You remember this, where he's like, "Oh, you fell for the oldest trick in the book, man. What is with you, man?"
Oh. I think it's just him. I just think it's just him doing the over the top gotcha on the joke, because he's just going over the top on his already existing accent, but I could be wrong.
That's a weird movie, though. Like, centering a movie around, like, the ability of dudes to, like, grab their junk and, like, you know, a big penis-shaped laser comes out.
You are describing why I never saw this movie until well past college. Because my parents were not about to let me watch this movie.
It had some pretty raucous humor, but, like, everybody, I mean, John Candy, Joan Rivers, Bill Pullman, Daphne Zuniga, and Rick Moranis, like everybody was really, really good. Was that Jeffrey Tambor as the second in command too?
Yes, it was.
He's so
yeah, he is. And that's another thing. Jeffrey Tambor like runs through a lot of these comedies. We talked about Mr. Mom earlier. He's in that too. He's been around forever. It's no wonder he's so good at what he does. But yeah, Spaceballs, it goes to show like how huge Star Wars was in the day. Like, you come out with a movie 4 years after the last Star Wars came out, and you know, and make something like that, and everybody's like, all right, I'm with this. Couldn't make a movie like, you know, I don't know. There's not very many movies you could spoof 4 years after the fact and still get, you know, be relevant.
Another one we should talk about, at least in terms of spawning a subgenre, is Fatal Attraction.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't know that there was much of that before that movie. And then after that movie is when you start getting all of these, like, what's the Jennifer Jason Leigh roommate one?
Sing a White Female.
Yeah, and then of course all of these, like every other movie on like Lifetime and Hallmark Channel, are like somebody stalking somebody.
Yeah,
there's a whole subgenre that came out of that.
Well, and in a way, this also sort of spawns Basic Instinct and all that too.
Ooh, yeah,
I mean, that's you know, not to mention the Michael Douglas seemed like he was always in these movies too. Like, he was always in some sort of hypersexual type movie with like crazy women in it, you know. It's like that, and Disclosure and all that's coming out later on.
Although, I mean, we talked about, you know, the 1-2 punch for Steve Martin this year, but you got to give that to Michael Douglas too with this and Wall Street. It's two pretty, you know, praised movies that came out in the same
Definitely.
He was working hard.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Kevin Costner's in The Untouchables and No Way Out.
Yep.
Cher's in Moonstruck and in The Witches of Eastwick. Like, there's a lot of people like working overtime this year.
Yeah.
Another huge cult hit would be Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
Evil Dead 2 is the movie that I think that's the one everybody refers to when it comes to Evil Dead. Like, the first Evil Dead, it feels like they were going for a sincere horror movie. And then the second one, they sort of realize how ridiculous that first one is, and really go off the wall and let Bruce, and just sort of unleash Bruce Campbell on us and everything.
Yeah, talk about a subgenre, right? I mean, what was a horror comedy that came before this? I guess maybe like Tales from the Dark Side and things like that. But like, you know, I mean, that in cinematic format, this would seem like kind of breaking the mold.
Nothing that was both at the same time, right? Like, we just did Little Shop of Horrors, which I guess has some horror elements, but it's not bloody. You know what I mean? It's this is the first thing I can think of that's just like this.
Yeah, and Evil Dead 2 is super bloody, but it's one of those where it's always done for effect. I mean, like the walls explode with blood in this movie, but it's never meant. I don't think it's ever meant for you to be like, oh no, blood coming out of the walls. You're just like, oh my god, it's so ridiculous, you know.
There are some times where it's genuinely scary, actually, and kind of like Cabin in the Woods ended up being with Joss Whedon, years later. Mm-hmm. But there's some genuinely like creepy moments, but then you're reminded when you see like a moose head like cartoonishly laughing at Bruce Campbell that it's a comedy.
Yeah. What else, guys?
Well, we've already talked about all the ones I think are going to contend. Mm-hmm. There's still a handful of you guys forgot to mention this movies that we should probably mention, like Good Morning Vietnam.
Yes. Good Morning Vietnam is kind of an odd movie to sit through.
It is.
If you are a big Robin Williams fan in 1987, you're sort of expecting him to be just a comedy DJ all the way through it. But it's got a lot of drama in it.
It does.
A lot of drama. And in fact, it like very serious stuff in it, but the draw for that movie was him being a DJ and riffing and all that. And that's where that movie gets its fun and its motor. Like when it gets serious, it's kind of, I don't know if I really like that direction, but it's still a solid movie.
I remember the trailers. It was sold as a straight up zany radio DJ comedy. As I remember. Like there was no warning for how much serious stuff is actually going to be in there.
Yeah. I believe the number one box office hit was 3 Men and a Baby. Leonard Nimoy directed 3 Men and a Baby.
Who knows
if anybody? Yeah. I mean, that's sort of a crazy thing. Like you would never ever, like, if I could probably go to people on the street and ask who directed 3 Men and a Baby and get 0 out of 1,000 on that, because you would never guess that. But that was a huge, huge hit, and I think it has faded over the years.
I hope it's faded.
Yeah. But at the time, you couldn't have gotten 3 bigger names than Selleck and Danson and Gutenberg all in one movie.
Yeah, they were all huge right then.
Yeah.
Between Beverly Hills Cop 2 and The Lost Boys and 3 Men and a Baby, I wonder what like the box office ranking was, because they were all pretty huge hits, weren't they?
I will look it up real quick so that we can figure that out. Yeah, like 3 Men and a Baby may only be known now for the so-called ghost situation that actually isn't a ghost at all. And a lot of people think that it's the Ted Danson cutout, but I remember when that rumor first came out, and then people were debunking it by saying, oh, it's a Ted Danson standee that you see later in the movie. That's what that was. When you look in the background, it's definitely not that Ted Danson thing. So I don't know what it is. It's probably just a kid that got smuggled onto the set or something. He's just, looking out at the scene or whatever, but I don't know. What else, guys?
Oh, geez. La Bamba. I'm starting to get movies that I remember, but don't hold a bunch of weight for me anymore. Lost Boys. I watched Lost Boys like crazy as a teenager. Whenever my parents weren't watching me.
Let's talk about Lost Boys for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I hate this movie.
Yes, I'm so glad to hear you say that.
Oh my God, it's such a bad movie. I watched
horribly.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. Now, see, I didn't watch it when everybody else did. I remember this being a huge movie, and Jeremy, you're talking about like never getting to see it. I didn't see it until I was way older, and then I saw it again like on a midnight show. And the first time I watched it, I was like, this movie's not very good. And then the second time I watched it on a midnight show, where they actually had Corey Feldman come and like do a Q&A or something before it, because he was here for the they have that tattoo festival or whatever. So they just happened to run, they scheduled Lost Boys around that time so he could come and do a Q&A, and people were asking really stupid questions and stuff. He kept on, he's like, what is it like? People were asking him like, what is it like? And it was about the character in his movie. like, how was it like drinking blood or something like that? and Corey Feldman would always be like, well, I'm an actor and I was playing a character in a movie, so it wasn't really, So I was just sitting there going, man, he's going to leave Nashville thinking of nothing but the stereotype of Nashville.
That reminds me of like the famous William Shatner moment on SNL where he's at the Trek convention. Like, do you remember that one time? He ends up saying, "It's just a freaking show, people, get a life."
Okay, so in 1987, 3 Men and a Baby was number one. Lost Boys is like way down there. It's like 39th. Or something like that. So it wasn't a huge hit, but although if you're looking at like it made 32 million in 1987, which, who knows what, I bet if you put it in some sort of, inflation calculator, that would probably still be a decent hit today. But the four huge movies, of 3 Men and a Baby, Fatal Attraction, Beverly Hills Cop 2, and Good Morning Vietnam, they all made over 100.
Wow. Wow.
Another one, just to briefly, we don't need to talk about it too much, is Monster Squad, because I just remember how many people would go around and say, I'm going to kick him in the nards. Yeah. Wolfmen don't have nards and all that. That was if you were 10, that's something you said all the time.
Yes. And that's all we need to say about that movie.
That's all we need to say about the movie. Mannequin.
Do you guys remember much about Overboard? Do you remember that?
No. I don't. I know it's got Kurt Russell in it and
Goldie
Hawn.
Yeah, it's Goldie Hawn, and I think she like has a concussion and like blacks out and goes over her yacht. She's a rich, wealthy socialite and goes over her yacht and is somehow rescued by Kurt Russell and his ragtag band of boys. Kurt Russell convinces her that they're married, and while she's amnesic, he convinces her that they're married, and
which is also known as rape in some circles.
It's absolutely rape. Why is there so much rape in the 80s?
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, she just kind of blossoms into this romance with him, and then she figures out that she actually does love him and all that stuff. And
of
then,
course, because it makes it all okay. Because if she didn't love him in the end, then that's like one creepy ass movie we just watched.
Yeah, well, it's a creepy.
It already
ass movie
is.
Anyway,
it already is.
I watched it as a tween.
Yes. We also mentioned in another podcast, for whatever reason, and I can't remember why, but batteries not included.
Yeah, we were talking about Cocoon.
It was a punchline to Cocoon, and we thought like, well, maybe some of the same people did it, but they didn't. So like, I guess it was one of those. Well, Cocoon was a success. Let's make batteries not included like that. What else is on this list? Anything else of note that we might need to? There's like Superman 4, which is one of the worst worst Superman ever made, and The Living Daylights, which is one of the worst Bonds ever made.
Yeah.
So you had franchises were not doing very well back then. Throw Mama from the Train, another big comedy that came out back then.
Nice.
A sort of a comedy remake of Strangers on a Train. I liked it, but I don't think it's generally considered a good movie in general. But that's about it. I think we're ready to vote on this.
I think we are. Barrett, do you know the order?
Today's order is Chris, Barrett, and Jeremy.
I'm last.
All right. Jeremy's got the deciding vote. We didn't talk about Adventures in Babysitting either, by the way.
Because we shouldn't. That line, that movie has got one line that everybody quoted, and I was like,
but it shows up in the most popular feature films of 1987 for IMDb. Number one.
I'm sure
over Princess Bride.
It's not good.
And I think we briefly mentioned Dirty Dancing, right?
No, but we just did just then. And again, that's all I need to say about that movie.
Well, and Dirty Dancing was a sort of both of those movies are just sort of there's a lot of generational movies in there where it's just like, if you were around at the time, you liked it, and that's about it.
Well, I Had the Time of My Life was a huge hit, and that was actually sung by Patrick Swayze, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
No, not that one. The She's Like the Wind was sung by Patrick Swayze. Okay. The other one I can't remember. There was two singers on that.
Yeah.
But
it was a good performance.
She's Like the Wind, and we also skipped over Empire of the Sun, which was Christian Bale. I don't know if it was his first role, but Steven Spielberg was still going along for that sort of like, I'm going to start making epic movies now. He sort of running away from his fantasy roots, I guess, in a way, because he was making a lot of these serious movies. Empire of the Sun, I remember watching the Oscars for the 1987 and everything, and I kept going back and forth. Last Emperor, Empire of the Sun. Last Emperor, Empire of the Sun. Last Emperor, Empire of the Sun. They're not the same movie by any stretch, but they sort of see, have the same themes or whatever. Anyway, all of that just to get to cover our ass and everything, and I will go on and vote for The Untouchables.
Nice.
I don't think there's a better movie on this list, although Princess Bride is easily up there. I think those two in general are my favorite two movies, but I'm going to have to go with The Untouchables because of just how enjoyable it is all the way through. It's De Palma at his best. It's the best. I think it's got the best soundtrack. It's an exciting look at a real time in history, which, means that there's a lot of stuff that was not true in that movie, but you can't get a more exciting movie, and I can't vote against it.
Yeah, the only thing that I remember when I was watching it last night, it just dawned on me how amazing this movie is from top to bottom. Then I started just like finding things that were like, what's wrong with this movie? And one of them is like the cavalier use of guns. Mm-hmm. Like they basically just hold those fuckers wherever they want to, and like as they're going through the post office or the bank, they're just like pointing it at random people. When Kevin Costner runs home to find his daughter, like he hugs her with a gun in his hand.
Yeah.
So I love The Untouchables for the same reason that we've talked about it ad nauseum, and I love Princess Bride as well. It's just kind of tattooed on my heart. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to vote for, probably throw a fly in the ointment here. I'm going to vote for Full Metal Jacket.
Ooh.
As you may have picked up, I'm a Stanley Kubrick slut.
Yes.
And I love just about everything that he's done. And like Chris was saying, he's absolutely correct. The second half of this movie gets total short shrift. It's terrific. And the interplay with each of them, I would put this up there, if not above Apocalypse Now and the other Vietnam movies. I think it's a masterwork. And the first half of it is certainly nothing to sneeze at. I mean, it's Vincent D'Onofrio and Arlie Ernie and Matthew Modine. Like, everybody is really, really on top of their game, probably because Kubrick is such an autocrat and, really got the best out of everybody, no matter how torturous it was. So that's my pick. I love it.
All right.
Wow. So where do we stand? We got one for Untouchables and one for Full Metal Jacket?
Yep.
Oh, boy. And I'm the tiebreaker, and I'm tempted to throw Broadcast News in here just to fuck everything up, because I really do like that movie that much. But here is yet another example of where a really complicated discussion was easy, because I'm voting The Untouchables.
Nice.
I want to go out of my way to talk about Princess Bride, and this is the first time I've actually had a hard time choosing. I think Untouchables is clearly my favorite movie from this year, but its quality cannot be denied. Then you go look at Princess Bride, just as good a quality and probably arguably more cultural impact. And I went back and forth a lot. I really did. But it's Untouchables, and we win.
Well, and to show that how close this is also on the IMDb, and you're talking about people voting and everything, I mean, The Untouchables comes in at 7.9, The Princess Bride at 8.1, and Full Metal Jacket at 8.3. They're all right there in that same cluster there. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's, they're all fine examples of, you can't lose with any of these movies.
Yeah, you're right.
That's a crazy high rating for Full Metal Jacket, because people, when you think about Kubrick movies, people don't really put this up there as one of his, top three, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's just that, I think people I think back in 1987 and then the following years, you had a lot of people who were like huge Clockwork Orange, 2001, mm-hmm. the Shining type fans who were like, well, this is not a great movie, and of course, not his best movie or whatever. Yeah. So they sort of dismissed it, and I think that also it took so long to make it because it's Kubrick. It took forever. This was supposed to come out before Platoon. And
yeah.
And
so he's fallen behind all those other movies that we just talked about.
Yeah. So, and you have this long list of Vietnam movies that have come out at this point, and by the time his comes out, it doesn't seem as fresh. But now, when you have 29 years of space to think about it, it's really, I think you're right. I think it's the best of those Vietnam War movies. So, I mean, I think after a while, you get a lot of the newcomers to, when they first hear about Kubrick and they start watching these movies, they're like, oh, we're watching these with fresh eyes. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how that rating has gotten higher over the years, because they realize, hey, this isn't just a first half movie. It's a whole thing is good.
Well, if you had asked me at midnight last night, it would have been a unanimous vote for Untouchables. So wow. I really had to think about it. And that was a very tight group.
Yeah. And it's weird. Like after a vote like that, I feel like we're short shrifting Princess Bride, but we really aren't. I mean, it's just the way it is. We have 3 people, 3 votes here.
It's the way it is, Rob Reiner. Just fucking deal with it, man.
That's right.
And we should reiterate that we're not trying to pick the best movie, quantitatively, right, for everyone. It's right. The 3 of us picking our best movie from that year. And
that's correct.
And we love Princess Bride. It's not like, it came in second. It's not like it's terrible. Or it came in a third, I guess. But
yeah. I mean, it's just, it's such a great movie, but it's such an amazing year too. And, if you went out and took a poll, you'd probably get more Princess Bride and everything, but This Is Us.
If Andy Murray had played tennis in the early 90s or something like that, he probably would have had a bunch more championships.
Yeah. It's just the time it came out. But anyway, that is our 1987 wrap up, and now we're going to go and change some gears a little bit, and we're going to talk some TV, but it's not TV, it's HBO, right? We're going to talk some Game of Thrones.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
That's what I do. I drink and I know things. And winter is coming.
Watch out. There are some spoilers in this episode. I think we've had quite a bit of requests to talk about Game of Thrones.
A lot of questions based on Game of Thrones too.
And the 6th season just wrapped up. And I'll say what I said the other day when Game of Thrones came up. When I saw the finale to this season, it's weird how a piece of fiction like this can make you think that you're actually witnessing history as it unfolds. The opening 20 minutes of the season finale, the season 6 finale, are really good. I mean, they take a cue from The Godfather there and everything. It's one of those things where the person of power isn't actually at the place where they're making all their moves, but they're making all the moves.
Yeah,
and so like it's the way it starts off, the music, that piano that you never hear in Game of Thrones at all.
Yeah, it was. I even tweeted, "This feels like Lost."
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how far we're going to get into, we're going to just talk about season 6, or we're going to talk about it as a whole. I have a lot to say about the finale, but where do you guys want to direct this?
Well, I want to start by saying that season 6 finale is one of the most entertaining and satisfying pieces of television I've ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah, absolutely.
From start to finish. And it's not satisfying in the sense that it's all fan service. And most of that happened the episode prior with the Battle of the Bastards, where they sort of did a bunch of wish fulfillment for what the fans had been wanting. And I think, to their detriment, did not throw us any heartbreaking twists at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
But in the finale, there's a lot that was predicted to happen. Almost none of it does, but everything that happens is just, that show is at the top of its game right now. And all the performances, Lena, what's her last name?
Lena Headey.
She's so good in that episode. And just the look between her and her brother when he comes back and sees how much has changed in the short time he's been gone.
Oh, yeah.
And that glance between the two of them, I mean, God, I was out of my chair cheering when that episode ended. It was so good. And I've always loved the show. I think the show has always been fantastic, but I just feel like they've reached another level somehow.
Yeah, that whole season finale thing wasn't really possible until episode 8, where they decided that trial by combat was not going to be enforced anymore. Right. They wouldn't be able to do that. And so there's like this mysterious thing when her whisperer's guy, Qyburn, comes up to her and says, the rumors, the little doves have found proof or whatever of it or whatever. It's like, how much? And she's like, is it as much as we thought? It's much more. And that's exactly what they're talking about at that point. That's that next move, because the whole move was to get the Mountain to fight for her in the trial by combat, and then they stripped it away from her, and then it's like, all right, I guess we're going to blow up everything now.
And I don't think any of us are book readers, right? Have you ever read the books?
I have not. Although I just watched this whole series again, starting with episode 7 of season 6. I started with season 1, episode 1, and watched all the way up to season 6 finale. Today, I've watched them all through there, and after watching all that, I'm like, maybe I should read the books too. I'm kind of that interested in this show where I want to get some further backstory.
What's interesting to me is how he continually, whether I'm sure this happens in the books, but I'm talking now about the show, they continually bring in new characters to fill the void left by people they've killed. And like, I remember I'm watching the show, I don't know anything about what's going to happen. Season 2 spoiler coming. People start dying. People that I care about start dying. And at the end of season 2, like, most of the major characters are dead. And I'm like, well, who's going to be the major characters moving? But they have never struggled to find new major characters to match with the perfect actor or actress. And I'm just engaged constantly.
Yeah, well, like in season 1, Tyrion Lannister is sort of he's just kind of, he's traveling around, he's visiting the Wall, he's, doing all this stuff. And then, by far one of the biggest moves of the entire series is when he gets accused of, trying to kill Bran, while he's, in his room or whatever. And so, Catelyn tries to take him to the Vale and to get a trial and everything. And that's what sort of sets that whole series in motion, really, because she very stupidly does that. Like, people like tell, oh yeah, that looks like Tyrion's sword or whatever. So based on that, then she brings them to the Vale, and it pisses off the Lannisters, and the Lannisters start making their moves and everything. But you think Tyrion's just kind of like there to be kind of like comic relief in some way. And then he turns into a much bigger character.
Well, he's still, even at the end of season 6, he's still been the most effective ruler of King's Landing that we've ever seen, right?
Yeah.
He cared about the people. He tried to protect them. He devised a strategy for that battle that was actually correct. He doesn't get any of the credit for it because he gets whacked in the face and knocked unconscious. But nobody that's ruled that city has come close to being as good as he is.
Yeah. Well, a lot of what happens with him on that Battle of the Blackwater and everything is that, he gets knocked out, but also Tywin Lannister with the Tyrells shows up at the last minute.
Yeah.
And like takes the glory basically. And when he gets knocked out, he wakes up and everything he did is changed. He had put Pycelle in the cells and everything, and now he's like over him and looking at him like, you're like, oh, it's just going to be a little bit different from your Hand of the King room, but you don't need that much space, all that. All that stuff that he had worked so hard to get to is vanished by the time Tywin shows up.
That Tywin showing up, I even think when we talked about this at lunch the other day, that was one of my examples of the show always makes you think you know how something's going to end, and at the last minute throws a wrench into it, because you were pretty ready for the city to be sacked by Stannis and his men at this point.
Yeah.
battle had turned. She's sitting on her throne. I think she's even getting ready to drink poison.
Yeah, and she's about to give Tommen poison.
Yeah, and then, Tywin comes in on a horse, and you're just like, oh shit, the Lannisters are even more strong now. Like, that's what the Battle of the Bastards season 6 penultimate episode was missing.
Yeah.
Because everything that happened was exactly like, he comes up over the ridge with the army, like Gandalf, at the dawn on the second day or whatever, and that's what you expected. And then I was kind of thinking, maybe somebody's going to stab somebody in the face or something. Maybe Sansa will die. Or I was expecting a Game of Thrones shocker, and that episode doesn't provide it. But they made up for it with the finale.
Yeah.
Can I ask something real quick?
Sure.
So as somebody who's been keeping up with season 6 on recaps and stuff like that, but I haven't seen anything past the first episode, how much of a departure do you notice from the series up to now, because it was already written, up until this season where they kind of were without a safety net?
None. I don't see.
Really?
It doesn't feel.
Well,
they cooperated with him pretty closely. I think they know where he's going with the book, even if they're doing different things.
I think there are some differences, and like that episode 9 that you're talking about is a huge. I think a lot of people have realized there's no way that's the way George R. Martin would write that.
Yeah, that's kind of what
but the other thing that keeps coming up with like season 6 is, even though it was satisfying as far as entertainment is concerned and everything, there's a lot of story missing in some of the stuff that they're doing. They're rushing now. They realize that they're close to the end. So they're like, there's gobs of backstory now that they're just kind of racing over. And
in some storylines, it's the opposite, right? Like, we spent almost 2 seasons with Arya training over in Braavos, didn't we?
Yeah. So and I don't know. I mean, I felt like they've always known they were going to have this many seasons, so I don't know why they did waste so much time in Arya doing that, especially since they didn't really get to the point of what no one was and all that. Like, the whole thing about becoming no one and everything always sounded like, to me, and I'm sorry if this is the point and I'm being dense, but the point of no one always seemed to me is becoming someone else. That's what it always seemed like to me. But they didn't really have any rules set down in place for what becoming no one actually entailed. And so there's a lot of like frustrating like things where she's, you see her training and getting struck when she tells lies and all this other stuff. And I mean, I guess the whole point is that it's working up to her saying, well, you know what? I'm not no one. I'm Arya Stark. And I just wanted to do this so that I could learn how to kill fools, and that's why I did this. And by the way, getting into that, in season 6 finale, she does kill some fools. She kills the Freys, who are the masterminds behind the Red Wedding and everything. And it's beautiful. But I'll tell you one thing: after watching it the second time, Arya Stark is a psychopath, man.
Oh. Yeah. I don't understand why she's making flirty eyes at Jamie in the bar, like before she goes in for her kill, because that's her under there as the server girl. Why is she even pretending to flirt with him?
Well, maybe it's just part of the character that she's playing, and maybe it's just that, haha, you're next. I mean, it could be something to that effect. But yeah, like, it's funny. I thought that, I was like, the show is making out this thing where she's gotten revenge because her brother and her mother died at the hands of Walder Frey and the Lannisters and the Boltons. That she's finally getting her revenge and everything, and they're showing her smiling and all that. And then the second time you watch it, you're like, oh, wait a minute, this might not be good. And I watched the after the episode thing with David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, and Benioff actually says, this is a great moment for Arya Stark because you finally see one of her enemies get vanquished, but it's a troubling spot for her character. Because she's bloodthirsty, and that might turn into a big liability later on. So he doesn't say about the liability. That's my words, but
right.
But I feel like I don't remember her whole list, but maybe she's got somebody on her list that shouldn't die. And maybe she kills the wrong person. That's something that's very interesting that could come up in the next couple seasons.
That is interesting,
because she doesn't know how much has changed by this point. She's been on Bravos for, like you said, like 2 seasons now.
Yeah.
What else do we want to get into in this?
Well, who do we think? Who are we rooting for? Right? Like,
that's a good question.
The show's going to end at some point, I would assume, with either the Iron Throne being destroyed completely or somebody claiming that sucker for a permanent status. And you've taken a lot of the pieces off the chessboard at this point as to who that could be. We get major clues about Jon Snow's lineage, and potentially he might be not Ned Stark's bastard, but somebody with a claim to the throne. We've got Dany over with her armies and dragons. We've got Tyrion, who everyone loves. And we got Bran, who's the three-eyed raven who I doubt would ever take the throne. But who else is there to root for that we think has a shot?
I don't know if there are very many other than those two. And the question is, because Jon Snow, and since we're spoiler heavy here, the Jon Snow is apparently, if the big fan theory is correct, and they seem to keep sort of, I don't know, not confirming it, but at least leading us this way, that Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark are the parents of Jon Snow, and legitimately too, not the raped and all that other stuff that people have told the story. Because the story is Rhaegar raped her, and that's how Jon Snow, or the baby that she had. Well, they didn't even know about the baby. They just knew that he took her away and everything. But, that would mean that he's a Targaryen, and there's a lot of speculation. Does that mean that later on he might hook up with Daenerys, who's also a Targaryen, and they've never been shy about, interbreeding in these things. They've never been shy about it, especially
on the first episode.
Well,
wasn't
even
it?
Yeah.
The Targaryens, before the show ever started, they were known for
hundreds of years.
Yeah,
hundreds of years of incest, and there was that's what the sort of the defense is in the early going when Jaime and Cersei are both sort of found out. And it's amazing, by the way, just as a side note, I didn't realize how openly people talked about that in the first few seasons. Like when it's just kind of like, Ned kind of figures it out, but he doesn't tell anybody. And then he just sends a note to Stannis about it. And so then these whisperings come along, but then all of a sudden people are like openly in front of Cersei and Jaime implying it, or just saying right out, that, I know that you guys are fucking, but that's one of their early defenses. I think Ned goes to Cersei in season 1 and accuses them, and Cersei's like, well, the Targaryens did that for hundreds of years and nobody batted an eye.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering if we're not going to see that now that she's claiming the throne and Jaime's back in town. Are they going to play king and queen as brother and sister and not hide it?
No, I would doubt that. I would doubt that completely. Like, maybe. It would be interesting, of course, if she said, you know what, I've vanquished my enemies, and this is just going to be okay with everybody now.
I think she's in a place now. This is just my read on it, but I think she's in a place now where she's like, disagree with me, I'll burn you with wildfire.
Right.
Maybe she doesn't care.
Deal with it.
I do want to discuss, especially since we are CinemaSins here. That amazing finale has what I believe is a huge plot hole in the beginning, in that first 20 minutes. If you think about the plan that that Cersei's concocted here, where she's going to blow up the Sept of Baelor and blow up everybody in this thing, it requires. So there's a point where the High Septon goes and tells him, or the High Sparrow. I guess he's calling himself the High Septon by the end of it, but High Sparrow tells Lancel Lannister, you need to go and get you need to get Cersei here and everything. So he leaves with a couple of that Faith Militant, and they're going to go get Cersei. But instead, they get distracted by this little kid running down the stairs. Yeah. And instead of getting Cersei, which is the most important thing in this whole thing, he just runs after this kid because, he's running away from the the Sept of Baelor, and so he gets so distracted by that, he goes and runs through catacombs looking for him and all this, and then that's where the big huge reveal comes from. Like, they're using the wildfire, they're going to blow up the whole Sept and all that. And here's where it's a huge hole for me, is that if he's not distracted by this kid running down the stairs, Cersei doesn't have anybody protecting her. The Mountain is at Tommen's room.
Yeah.
And the Faith Milton is only scared of the Mountain. So Cersei's just there by herself in her own room. Easily gotten caught and then thrown and like taken to the. It would have taken a long time, obviously, that she would have probably gotten blown up, but I felt like that was a huge hole.
Well, and doesn't it feel like that was the part of the plan on Cersei's side was, let's distract Lancel, lead him down into the catacombs, stab him in the back, but he'll still be alive enough to see right before the wick burns down. Like, and who lit those candles? And do they, in this day and age, this is really getting CinemaSinsy, but how do they know when to light that candle so that it will finally reach the green shit right at the moment they want it to?
Like, yeah, maybe they melted the candles down to a certain point, and then like, all right, when Lancel comes down here and chases after you, and he surely will, light these melted candles up, and then run like the wind, because it's about to blow up.
It would have made more. I mean, I get why the show did this, so that we, the viewer, get a chance to see the reveal
absolutely
the same way, and it doesn't take away from the enjoyment of the show at all. But they should have planned to just kill Lancel instead of sending children to distract him. Send a person with a sword.
Yeah.
What are we going to do with Daenerys? Because this season ends with her. She's headed to King's Landing now. She's got 1,000 ships. She's got all 3 dragons. She's got the Iron Islands people in their ships. And they're literally on the water. The last shot is panning up over Grey Worm standing on a boat as the dragons fly overhead. She's not going to be on the water for a whole season, is she?
No. I mean, well, and I hope not, obviously, because, I mean, it's the narrow sea, right?
You know what I just realized they might do? They might pull a Bran. They might not show her much at all the next season.
Yeah.
And then when we do see her show up, like maybe in the finale, it's to attack or what have you. I don't know. It would be boring if we kept cutting to her on a boat.
Yeah, I mean, I hope not, and I don't think they will. I mean, we're getting 7 episodes of next season?
Yeah,
and another 7?
Two more seasons of 7 episodes.
And so, we're if the last few series that I've watched that have done that are any indication, they're going to be moving at a breakneck speed, because there's a lot to settle at this point. Because, Daenerys is going across the narrow sea and she's going to go to King's Landing. The question is, does she get there before the White Walkers get there? And there was a sort of a throwaway thing at the end of that finale where Uncle Benjen says he can't go through the wall because it's got magic in transcriptions in it or something like that, and so nobody dead can get through that. So the White Walkers are going to have to find a way to get over the wall, and I'm wondering if it's going to be Bran that leads them through the wall, because. Remember, the reason why they're able to get down in that little cave under the tree is because he goes and wargs where they are, and they touch him while he's doing it.
Yeah.
And the only reason why they were able to pass under that thing is because of screenwriting. So like, I feel like if he does cross the wall, then that's how they'll get through there. Am I far reaching on this? Because it doesn't seem like they would be able to get through there any other way. Bran's going to have to he's going to have to go back past the wall.
Here's a question I've been asking lately, because I truly have lost track. Are any direwolves left alive?
Yeah,
there's Ghost still alive?
Ghost is still alive.
Why didn't he fight in that battle?
Which battle?
The Battle of the Bastards.
Oh, I don't remember why.
I'm just glad to know he's okay, because they've killed a bunch of them.
Yeah, I mean, I have a feeling that I have a feeling that the reason why is because there's just no reason to put him out there in the middle of a battle like that. Mm-hmm. Like, he's more close quarters type thing.
But Bran and Rickon both lost their direwolves this season.
Yeah. Bran lost his in that Hodor episode.
Oh my god. That was epic.
Yeah, it
that
was
as every bit as epic and whammy as Walkabout, that episode of Lost where we find out that Locke is in a chair.
I believe the same guy, one of the, I think Jack Bender may have done that episode. The same guy who was on Lost.
Wow. Well, then that guy's a genius.
Yeah, Jack Bender was a big Lost director, and then I believe he did the episode The Door. Getting back to, Bran lost his in that battle, and then Rickon lost his off screen. Basically, they just show the head.
Yeah.
But there's also that Nymeria, I think is the name, that they let go early in the first season, and we haven't seen since. And I guess there's like the idea that wolf might come back at some point. So that leaves, they have Ghost, Nymeria, and that's it, I think.
Yeah, I think the rest all lost theirs.
All the other ones are dead. That
sucks.
Yeah. What else to talk about? I guess we could talk about that Hodor episode.
Well, I mean, it gut punched me so hard. And what's great about that episode is it's not just the sacrifice he's making, but the double layer that by warging in this moment, Bran created Hodor.
Yes.
And it's so gut-punching. I ran upstairs. My wife has never seen an episode of this show. I spent 20 minutes just explaining backstory to her so that I could explain why I wanted to cry right now.
Right. I was actually trying to tell Barrett this the other day, and and I was like, okay, so, and then when you start telling the story, you're like, but okay, wait a minute, there's some other stuff you need to know too. Yeah. There's like this a huge amount of backstory that goes into this being a payoff moment. And so like, what's weird about that episode is that when was it Shira or what's that girl that he's with, screams, "Hold the door," for the first time. I actually, and then you see him, like, his name is Willis when he's younger. When you see him, like, suddenly, like, his eyes paste over and everything, I was like, oh, this is where they're going, aren't they?
Yeah.
So like at first I was like, I don't know if I like this or not, but every time I've watched it since or seen a clip of it, I just nearly tear up.
Yeah.
Because it's just well done. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's 6 seasons of show. I just think that it's so popular that it just set viewings records for the show. More people are watching it now than ever. And I think we just wanted to kind of share our thoughts of this season and the show in general. In terms of specifics,
well, okay, I guess we could talk a little bit about what our favorite moments and favorite characters are of the show. I guess I'm trying to think of what my favorite moment is, because there's so many, like, just astounding things that have happened. I'm just like anybody who was on YouTube when that red wedding thing happened, because I had no idea that was happening.
Yeah, me neither.
And what's weird though is when you watch that season again, it's so inevitable. It's so like you should know that it's coming.
Yeah.
But you want to believe in Robb Stark so much. You're like, yeah, they killed Ned, but they're not going to kill Robb. He's like the hero now. And so like just a whole that, but when you watch it again, you're like, oh my God, this is really just like, him trying to marry some other woman and I don't blame him. I would have died for her too. When he's, marrying another woman and it's just like sort of just out in the open and saying, you know what, I don't need to go by my word, who cares? And all that, and sort of openly flaunting it and bringing his wife to the phrase and saying, here's my wife, deal with it. And all that, it's just a sort of it's amazing how inevitable it is. And I think it's even better when you watch it the second time.
I love, one of my favorite scenes is the fight between the Mountain and Prince Oberyn.
Yeah.
It's a fight to the death. Basically, Tyrion is chosen trial by combat, and Prince Oberyn's going to be his champion. And the way that it's staged and shot, unless you're just the kind of person that's constantly looking over your shoulder for what's coming, it really feels like he's about to win that fight. It really does.
Yeah.
And then just a hair too much cockiness, and the Mountain flips it on him. and then uses the same language back at him, and then crushes his face with his hands.
Yes.
And I was gut punched because nobody wants Tyrion to die, and nobody expected that he was going to. And of course, he hasn't. But this was the most likely way out because Oberyn only tells him, "I'll be your champion," like the episode before this, and you're thinking, "All right, this is the rescue for Tyrion," and Cersei's going to be so pissed. But no, not at all. I can watch that anytime. That scene.
That's definitely the most visceral death that they've ever shown, I think, on the, I mean, there's been a lot of throat slitting and getting a pregnant belly stab during the Red Wedding is pretty shocking, but that right there it's just insane, it's happened so quickly. And I think there was something that they sort of talked about earlier too. Somebody, I think it was Bronn, who's a great character, by the way.
Yes.
Bronn says something like, I could probably hold my own against him for a little bit, but if I just make one mistake, that could be it. And sure enough, that's what happens with Oberyn in that scene.
I feel like Bronn is sort of almost kind of a Han Solo of Westeros.
Yeah.
He's kind of like a sellsword, does whatever he wants, rubs people the wrong way sometimes, but really knows his shit and is handy in a fight.
What sort of tells you everything about Bronn is there's a scene early on when Tyrion has him as his squire, and I think later on he has him as his Kingsguard. There's a point where he fires that was it what's that one guy who's the Kingsguard who they send to the wall.
Oh yeah.
They send that guy to the wall, which is another great scene, by the way, when Tyrion has dinner with that guy and basically tells him he has no honor. I'm going to send you to the wall. When he talks to Bronn afterwards, he's like, would you ever like kill women and children and everything? And Bronn's like, I don't know. How much you paying me? And you think it's one of those great moments in Game of Thrones because Tyrion has somebody he can trust. This is a guy who helped him in the trial by combat and the Vale and all that. And he feels like it's a guy he can lean on, but he doesn't agree with him politically. And the guy would do anything for money. And it's exactly what he's against, but he has to rely on this guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question just for Chris, actually. If you've rewatched the whole series, I remember because I kept up with it for the first few seasons, but it was season 2, the Battle of Blackwater, as being like the first huge holy shit moment, right? Where they throw the wildfire and everything on there.
Yeah.
And is that accurate? Like, was that really the first huge set piece to really go over the top in this show?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean just like classic Game of Thrones, episode 9 is always where you see these big, huge battles. Like I believe in season 3, it's the Watchers on the Wall, which is the big, huge, wildlings versus, the people at Castle Black, which I can't remember for whatever reason.
And Hardhome, the next season.
Yeah, Hardhome was season 5. Yeah, season 5. But they all do that in episode 9, and that's in the first season it was Ned Stark. That was the big thing there. But second season, that was the first huge big action thing.
Well, they were doing a lot of TV tricks, right? Where like you would hear a lot of shouting on a black screen and it would cut to like Robb Stark riding a horse through a bloody battlefield where we were seeing the aftermath, but not the battle itself. And I think the Blackwater battle episode was the first time that we actually got to see all the fighting from such a massive event. And I think they've topped it every time they've tried. I thought the Battle of the Bastards was impressive as hell.
Yeah, I think, and this is, and we keep coming back to episode 9 about how some of the things are disappointing about it, and I'm going to say something really quickly good about it before I go back into the disappointing. But that battle is amazing on its own. It's as good as anything that's ever been in movies, if not better. And the battle is amazing. My only problem with that whole battle is just that there's no real history between Ramsay and Jon.
Right.
They have the shared, that they're both bastards and both called Snow at one point and everything. And then, I mean, just hearing what he did to Sansa would probably be enough, but to get him going in a battle like that. But they had no history whatsoever. So when it's when a episode is called Battle of the Bastards and everything, you're expecting there must be some huge tension between these two guys, but there's not really. It's as it stands though, great battle and great results in the end, but it's something that you kind of wish was a little bit more to it.
And that episode is responsible for the opening of the satellite campus, the Rickon School of Running Away from Things.
Yes.
Because if I'm running and a man behind me is shooting arrows at me in an attempt to kill me, I am not running in a straight goddamn line.
No,
I'm Jack Black and the Jackal, running all over the place, zigzagging,
diving, rolling, all sorts of stuff, man. I
made a Jackal reference.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And I, for some reason, remember exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. He's the weapon supplier, right?
Yeah, man. Yep. But I think one other thing I wanted to talk about this is that it's very interestingly heading in the direction of a feminist finale.
Yeah.
Where you have Cersei as the queen, you have Daenerys as Daenerys as the would-be queen coming to conquer King's Landing. You have Yara Greyjoy as a huge factor in getting the ships that she needs, getting some more people that she needs and more ships and all that. You have the people of Dorne who are all women at this point. You have Olenna Tyrell is another one. This is turning into a battle of all women nearly.
Well, and you still have Sansa and Arya too.
Yeah, and Sansa and Arya. Sansa's coming into her own. She's finally, you watch her. It's amazing how that character has grown.
Yeah.
And in season 6, she's just fierce. It's just great to watch. And like I said, I'll be interesting to see what they do with the Arya character since she's got this bloodlust now and everything. It's going to be great seeing her going around just destroying people, but like it's also going to take its toll at some point. But I'm very interested in seeing how that's all playing out because the men have been relegated to right hands and second bananas and all that, except for Jon Snow.
Right.
And Jon Snow may end up being, who knows what he may end up being a king. He may end up being, killed. Who knows? But it sets up a lot of interesting stuff. But like you were saying, who are we rooting for to be the ruler of this? Maybe they get to the point where they feel like they maybe not even need a ruler or something. Maybe there's been a theme throughout the whole series where people have been talking about how maybe it's just best that we just destroy this thing, like maybe we don't have a throne or a king or anything. Maybe everybody becomes independent and everything.
It's a series about communism.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody's equal, man. Everybody's the same. Just like we said, this is what we talked about. But yeah, I mean, you almost have to think that maybe this throne that they're going after is they'll realize how overrated it is and just destroy it by the end of it. But we have a lot of like scheming people who want to sit on the throne. You have like as far as the only dudes that are left over who still want it are Littlefinger and that was it Euron Greyjoy. Yeah, Euron Greyjoy. And there, who knows, there might be a couple others that I'm forgetting, but their way to the throne is very long. Like, I don't see how they could do it unless Littlefinger somehow convinces Sansa to marry him. And
well, that's what you said in that episode. I have a vision. It's me on the Iron Throne and you by my side.
Right. And I don't know. I mean, that would be an extremely surprising development if Sansa was suddenly just like, all right, I'll do this. I mean, what is the positives for her in that scenario? So I don't know how that plays out. That's the exciting thing about the next couple of seasons.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I think we've talked a good deal about Game of Thrones here. If we, I hope, hopefully that was satisfying to you. I think it was a good conversation, but who knows? Maybe it was our worst episode ever. I have no idea.
Episode ever.
Yes. At least we got 1987 to fall back on if, Game of Thrones somehow didn't connect. Anyway, yeah, I liked it too. I think it was fun to get all that out, especially after I just, watched it over again and all that. So that was fun to talk about. Anyway, that is for it for this episode. If you want to keep on going to SoundCloud, sound off, give us some comments, tell us how good or bad we are. We are reading those. And so that'll be this Sincast for this week. Chris Atkins and Jeremy Scott and Barrett Share. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Comment on our episodes on our SoundCloud page. Check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit. And be sure to visit CinemaSins.com.
Feel a breath in my face. Her body close to me. Can't look at her eyes. She's out of my belief.
Just a fool to believe I
Just a
am
fool to
leaving.
believe.
This was one of the songs in my middle school 7th grade music class that we, I guess, analyzed. So there were several days in class where we listened to this song, and there was a girl who sat right in front of me, and she always had a snack. And every time it got to the part, I feel a breath in my face, she would turn around and blow Dorito breath in my face.
Oh, God.
Every time. But I was attracted to her, so I let it slide.
Yeah, absolutely. You let anything slide when attraction's involved.
Guys will put up with terrible people if they're attractive.
It's like rap battles. Like, honestly, if I watch an actual rap battle, I don't know who won. Like, everybody seems pretty damn good to me. But it always seems like the crowd in attendance is like, oh, that guy totally won. And I'm like, how do you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.